Hey friends, I hope this video finds you well. Today we find ourselves all the way in the 17th chapter of the book of Acts, specifically in verses 10 through 21. And we've come a long way since we first began this devotionals. And I can't believe we're already here in the 17th chapter. Here we really find ourselves in a transitional space. There's movement towards new spaces where there is preaching unfolding, and there's also sort of movement away from spaces where some folks aren't really happy about this preaching that is happening. So in yesterday's story, we heard very articulately of how some of the folks in Thessalonica are not thrilled with Paul and the other disciples' teachings about this kingdom of God that's breaking out in our midst. And so we have Paul and these others who leave and stop by Berea on their way. And there in Berea, they find a Jewish community who is deeply interested in what they are preaching. That this community leans in, they're intrigued, they're researching, they're exploring the tradition of how they know God has operated in the past, and they're trying to draw the connections into how that tradition connects to their experiences of today and what they're hearing is unfolding in the current. It's really beautiful. But before too long, those in Thessalonica find what's happening in this community, and they kind of come to ruin the party and push Paul out towards Athens by himself. And in Athens, and a setup for tomorrow's devotional, he's walking around sort of a university town, talking randomly to different people, which really isn't that strange for Athens in that time. And finally finds himself in the court of Mars Hill, which was a very exclusive court, and he begins to provide an argument for what is the Christian faith. So our texts for today are very transitional, really between two spaces, and yet it's in this space that for me, and I hope for you as well, I'm finding myself with the question: of how, in what ways do we box in our notion of what this good news is, of what this kingdom of God is that is breaking out in our midst? Do we, as those in Thessalonica were the archetype of, do we put this idea of what God is doing in such a small box that it's really great for our own comfort levels, but at the same time, when things are breaking out and God's actually doing what God does, do we find ourselves getting angry because that's not how we understood God to work, how we understood this whole movement to be breaking out in our larger neighborhood? Or are we like those in Berea who are so intrigued by the aliveness, the dynamic, unfolding, transformative, playful nature of God, that when they hear from strangers who show up in their town that God is working in their midst, in the whole region and in the world, they lean in and they're intrigued? If I was to guess, I would say that at different moments we act different ways depending on who we're with and how comfortable we are and how everything's going on in our lives. But may today just be a moment of attuneness for us. Are we putting the expansive cosmic work of God in such a small mental box that we find ourselves not being able to just join in freely and playfully? Do we see the invitation that surrounds us? I hope this question finds you well. I hope these stories find you well. I'm praying for you this week, and I look forward to seeing you all very shortly. Take care.